am going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 6:04. My name is Hannah Arias. I'm the chair of the OSSD board. Thank you very much for being here with us. What's going to happen tonight is that Superintendent Clark will give a presentation. And I think rather than taking questions throughout, you'd rather just, this is a guess, barrel on through and then do questions afterwards.
Do it however you want to do it. However, it's small. Let's go informal.
Let's go informal. If you have a question, do please raise your hand. We'll call on you, and if you could.
They'll have to walk up to the microphone here.
Ooh. Okay. But again, we're small, we're intimate. Don't get nervous. Come on up. Please do provide your name and your town of residence. That would be very much appreciated. So, on that note, Michael.
All right. Well, hey, before we start the presentation around the budget, I do need to bring attention to a board member who is at their last board meeting tonight. Sarah has served on the board for a number of years, and you know, it's a lot of hours she sat in one of these meetings, doing a lot of hard work. And Sarah, I just want to thank you, because without board members, we can't. None of this works. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for your volunteer work. We don't know what you're going to do with all your extra time, but we hope that it's something fun. And with that, let me say to the other board members that are here and those that aren't able to be here tonight, thank them as well. It is definitely a hard job and volunteer. So keep that in mind. So thank you, board. I do have this organized in a slide deck for you, kind of working our way through. And getting you started here, last week I sent out some preliminary information through Parent Square, and I had a parent reply back, and she said, Michael, just keep it straightforward, keep it simple. Don't throw out all the acronyms. Just walk through it, right? Tell it like it is, and there you go. So the first handful of slides are exactly that. Tell you exactly where we are at a high level, and then after, I'll dig in deeper if that's what people want. And we can go as folks want to go with it. Sometimes I think when we start talking about the Vermont education finance landscape and how things are calculated and all that, I usually tell board members who are just starting off, Sarah's replacement is elected to the board. I'm going to say to that person, after their first budget season, don't worry, it'll be okay. It takes a couple or three times at least going through this to start understanding it. So what are the biggest factors on taxes in OSSD this year? Three big things. Our long-term average weighted daily membership. It's sort of like the number of students. The sale prices of homes. What I think is straightforward, I accomplished it. And the cost of goods and services. Those are the three things that are really impacting our tax rates this year. Okay. So the long-term average weighted daily membership. Simple. Because we have less students who qualify for assistance, our long-term average weighted daily membership is decreasing. This causes our cost for a long-term weighted average daily membership. So what we spend divided by that number ends up being a bigger number. And that causes tax rates to go up. Properties are selling for more than they did last year. What that means is that the common level of appraisal is going down by more than 10% in each of the three towns. When the common level of appraisal goes down, tax rates go up. Good news so far, right? And it didn't get better with the cost of goods and services. I think probably everybody here knows that the cost of goods and services have been on the increase. And so even after we cut $1.1 billion out of what would have been a level service budget. Our expenditure budget is still up by 6.3%. That really just has to do with the costs of things. For instance, our health insurance is going up by almost 12%. Right? Causes tax rates to increase. Okay, so with that parent in mind, the bottom line, putting those three slides together, because we have less students who qualify for assistance, our cost per weighted student is increasing. The CLA is decreasing, which causes tax rates to increase, and goods and services cost more. The result, we need to pay more from local taxes. Okay. This is in the annual report that you all have in front of you. If you can't see it up here, it is on page number, I think it's 6. Okay. And so what does all of that I just talked about mean? It means that in Braintree, on a $250,000 house, the annual taxes it will be $757 more a year, or $63 more a month. In Brookfield, for the year, it'll go up by $540, $45 per month. And for Randolph, it goes up by $436 or $36 a month. Right? So that's what my person online told me. Walk through, just tell you like it is. That's the tell you like it is. I can't just do that. I have to get into why each of those things are, so that people understand that, hey, this is how the formula works. This is what's going on here. These are what the drivers underneath that of those numbers were. Okay? So we've got that long-term average weighted daily membership. I think you could call it Motuata, maybe, I don't know, but that's what it is. So legislature worked on readjusting a couple years ago, went into effect for the first time last year, the weights that each student has. So when you look in that report and you see that we're reporting, I guess, 1,500 students last year, 1,300 students this year, those are long-term weighted students, and it's an average of them. We don't really have 1,500 actual students or 1,300 actual students in the schools. What happens is each student is assigned different weights. For instance, a student in poverty, as defined by qualifying for Medicaid and free and reduced lunch, would count as just a little over 2 students, right? That's the weight that's assigned there. Special education student has a weight assigned to it. An English language learner has a weight assigned to it. Okay? So all these different categories have different weights. Well, the big one for us has to do with qualifying for free and reduced lunch, which qualified you to be counting like you were 2 students, a little more than 2 students. The challenge is that through the pandemic, through COVID, our government was really pretty easygoing about did you qualify, did you not qualify. Typically, for Medicaid, you qualify on an annual basis. Demonstrate that you qualify on an annual basis. During COVID, they waived that requirement. And then last year, the Department of Vermont Health Access had the task of going through and removing people from Medicaid. And when they removed people from Medicaid, the connection here is that if you qualify for Medicaid, automatically qualify for free and reduced lunch. Right? And those two connections, if you're going to qualify for free and reduced lunch, you qualify for Medicaid ticket as well too, right? So as people came off of that, our numbers decreased. It didn't decrease any of our students. So the next two numbers that I have on here show you that for the year that we're operating in right now, we're built on 1,568.85 weighted students. For next year, we are going to be weighted on, we have 1,384.21 students. So a decrease of almost 100 right there, right? In reality, the next two numbers are what we actually have for average daily membership. So this number is much more accurate for what on an average day we have for students in our school buildings. You can see that we've gone from 800, almost 801, up to 802. So while our long-term weighted average daily membership has decreased by 200, our actual membership is increasing. Pretty much staying 800, 801, 802. Okay? This has a huge effect because in order to calculate for that number back there was our cost divided by our long-term weighted average daily membership. And when we take that big number and divide it by a smaller number, we get a bigger number. Okay? And that had the biggest impact on our tax, on the tax rates. Okay. I'll pause for a quick second in case anybody wants to talk about numbers, things like that of students and long-term weighted average daily membership. Fair enough. The common level of appraisal. You've heard the term probably before you've been in Vermont and looking at school finance. So what happens to our property taxes is they're based on what houses are selling for versus what they're appraised at, right? So the common level of appraisal was sort of designed so that we couldn't game the system, that a town couldn't game the system, appraise their houses low, which is what your taxes are based on. Like, appraise it low, and your tax rate goes up. Now, pay for your taxes go down if you don't have a mechanism underneath it. So when they developed this funding formula, the common level of appraisal was designed to make sure that houses were appraised where they actually were valued. Common level of appraisal essentially looks at the percent difference between a selling price and what the appraised price is. In this case, if your appraised price is higher than your selling price, your CLA is more than 100. Okay, your appraised price is more than your selling price. Your CLA is more than 100. If your appraised price is less than your selling price, then it's less than 100. Exactly the same, it's 100. Okay? And the lower the common level of appraisal number, the more it increases taxes. Okay, a little counterintuitive. These numbers work opposite each other. CLA going down causes tax rates to go up. And if that wasn't confusing enough, there's a little tweak between last year and this year that the legislature came up with last year with when CLA and how CLA is applied. Okay, so it's hard to compare numbers throughout the process from last year to this year until you get to the very end. When you get to the very end, it works out to be the same. that's important to know because your next slide looks at what actually happened to the actual common level of appraisal in each of the towns. You can see that Braintree went from 79.57 to 68.78. Brookfield from 95.21 to 84.23. And Randolph from 116 to 103. When you get down there, you look at what's going on. I would assume that that means that Randolph has been appraised much more recently than Braintree, and Brookfield might be somewhere in the middle. Okay? So that's what's going on with the common level of appraisal. Good if you're selling a house, right? Because when I look at those numbers, in Braintree, if you're selling your house, you're selling it for probably more than 30% of what it's appraised at. Okay? And then the cost of goods and services. So this is what this board, the thanks to the board at the very beginning, is all about. So the board said, okay, we laid out the budget timeline way back in September, October. Said that the board would get its first look at a budget in November. Being new, I brought a level service budget. In other words, whatever we were doing this year, let me back up. What I first said was, if there are things out there, folks, that we don't need, or to the administrative team, or things that you need to add, let's know about it. So the things that needed to come off, came off. It was a very small, like $80,000, maybe just a bit more of things that went off on a $27 million budget that didn't really account for a whole lot. So the level service budget, when we presented it to the board, we also had to say that the expenditure budget was going up by more than 10%. And the board kind of, right, we're all kind of new to each other. They looked, they were very thoughtful, very kind. And then somebody said, I don't think we're going to pass a budget that increased by more than 10%. We're going to have to do something about that. And at that November meeting, they said, Michael, why don't you come back? Governor's looking for school budgets to stay at a 3% increase or less. So bring us back a budget that's 3% or less. And then they said, hey, so we can see what it would look like, bring us back a level funded budget. What would we have to cut to get to a level funded budget? So then we went back as an administrative team and got ready for the December meeting. And what we did at that meeting, was we actually did the equivalent of preparing 10 different budgets. What we did was we presented the budgets with a 10%, a 9%, an 8%. So we brought it down a percentage. So about $250,000 each percentage point. That December meeting, it's recorded, it's out on the website. You're certainly welcome to go and see that. I certainly could talk about all of the cuts if we wanted to do that here tonight. But as I recall, we were at that meeting. It's one of the latest meetings I've been at here in Orem Southwest. And when we got to the fourth level, so about $1 billion worth of cuts, the board said, we don't think the community will support you going any further than that. The kinds of things that we were cutting at that point were pretty significant. And we shared as an administrative team that the next cuts that we have, there really we were in a spot where there are two paths that we would have to pursue. One path, and actually at the fourth cut, there was before we presented that fourth layer, say. We have an alternative. So lots of cuts to staffing is what was fixed. Or if you watch that December meeting, we also laid out, we could repurpose the Brain School and close the Brookfield School and all of our elementary students to RES. Move our sixth grade from RES to RU. Braintree, Braintree, we did pre-K and Tech. And the board said, no, that right now, the timeline for that is too short. Maybe we have to look at that in the future, but for this budget, we're going to go with the level that we're at, and then we're going to see if that's, you want to watch exactly what they said, go back to that December meeting, but that's my translation 2 months later. Okay, I heard them very clearly say, we want to go with, we're going to go with this budget. Okay. We came back to January, and by that point, the other thing that got reinstituted at the legislative level last year was they reinstituted the excess cost threshold. And at that December meeting, they said, if the budget that we're talking about right now goes above the excess cost threshold, when you come to January, make sure that you're able to tell us what we're going to do so that we get below the excess cost threshold. Got it? Because we knew we would be close. We were still in the December meeting arguing with the state over the loss of those long-term weighted average daily membership students. 200 was a big number. I needed proof that, hey, this is really where that number came from and how it happens. So that brings us to the January board meeting. That was the timeline. I think I'm going to talk about the January board meeting. That $1.1 million worth of reductions, which is what we're voting on, includes the eliminating the human resource director position and replacing it with an entry-level benefits coordinator. It involves reducing our school nursing staff from 5 full-time nurses to 3.5. It involves reducing our pre-K classrooms from 4 classrooms to 3. 1 in each building. Currently, there are 2 at RES, which will increase class sizes. Reductions of a library paraeducator support at the Randolph Union and the partial library services at Brookfield and Braintree. It eliminated a late bus. And then throughout the rest of it, it's a mishmash of different services and supplies. Is what accounts for that $1.1 million. Again, have here with me, I didn't put it up there. I didn't think people necessarily, they wanted to see that, they would go back to the December meeting and watch the December meeting if they wanted to know about all of the reductions and why those reductions were there. I think from a board standpoint, we tried to, as we went through the reductions, the first time at that December meeting was to explain what the logic was behind it. I'd be happy to do that again if I needed to. So the excess cost threshold set at the $15,926 for long-term graded average daily membership. And when you look at what we did, we came in at 15,731. We're a couple $100 behind. So we did not go over the excess cost threshold. There is no double taxation in this budget. Right?
Less than $200.
But less than $200. That's right. Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna stop there. That's the budget in the nutshell. It's a level service budget minus the items that we just talked about. And you saw what happened with the next.
Can you back up the slide to the
Yeah,
library?
but you gotta come up to the microphone so they can hear you out in TV land.
And also your name and town residence, please.
Was this the mic?
That's the mic.
So I'm Martha Hafner. I live in Randolph Center. And I'm interested in looking briefly at the information that you had on the libraries and on the last slide there. You said you were reducing.
Yep.
Partial librarian services at Brookfield at Braintree. Does that mean it's like a half-time librarian?
We
Those
removed,
settings?
we removed 0.2, so 1 day of library at each of those things.
Okay. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. Anything else people want to talk about as far as the budget goes?
So I want to be a little bit all over, but it's going to get to the budget in a second.
Sure.
Budget change, Braintree.
Perfect.
So just looking at the bottom line, this budget 1.6 million roughly more than previous year. So I want to ask about Article 12. If these reserve funds come to over $2 million, they could easily pay for the entire amount.
So those are coming in just a second. Those are my
Good.
next couple slides.
So you see where I'm going with this, but we would not have to pay likewise if we don't vote for 112, because that money gets put forward, so we don't have to pay the excess funds.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
So it does not. I'll answer the question right here. It does not go to next year's budget. It would go to 2 years from now budget. Right? Because that could go potentially towards that. Okay. Sorry, we got that to do here. So surplus funds are funds that are left over at the end of a budget year. Reserve funds are surplus monies that voters have set aside for specific uses in the future. For example, the voters typically approve that some surplus funds go into our facilities reserve account so that we have money available to maintain and repair our buildings when needed without having to borrow. Okay, Michael's right here. We're looking at Article 11, asks voters to transfer 1.2 million into the surplus for the operations fund. That already goes into reducing tax rates in the following years out. You develop the operations fund. There's already money in this budget coming from the operations fund. What I usually refer to that as buy the tax rate down. So that's already a piece that's happening. And what you've historically done is you take it money from surplus and you put it into the following 3 years so that that's predictable. Because what will happen, took, say, $2 billion and applied it towards the tax rate in 1 year, the following year, you start out the budget right off the bat with a $2 billion gap, right? What this operations fund does is it levels out your tax rates. So that's the downside. And then the other fund that you have is a capital reserve fund. And so, or building reserve fund is what you call it here. So we're asking to put $970,000 of that reserve. for the almost 2 million that you're talking about. And it goes towards future unanticipated building repairs. Okay. And then looks like I got an extra slide from there. Oh, I'm backing up. That's what I promise. So the last thing I share here tonight is the annual in-person meeting. It is right here on Monday. Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that are on the warning are voted at that meeting. 6 o'clock. Articles 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are voted by Australian ballot on March 4th. The 3 polling places are the Braintree Town Hall from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Brookfield Elementary School from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. and the Randolph Town Hall from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Happy at this point to take any questions. Yep. Done.
So I'm curious to know, Martha Hafner again from Randolph Farm. I'm curious to know what you can tell us about the buildings in general. That can be a place where a rather expensive budget item can appear, but what can you tell us about how up to date are we on our roofing, on our, all those plumbing kinds of expenses, on asbestos kinds of issues? What can you tell us about the building statuses at this point?
Sure, we had an extensive report around the buildings. You are in the building in the state of Vermont right now that has been identified as the building that is in most need of repair or replacement. And so, was it November's meeting where the architect groups that came?
Sounds right.
They walked through, again, recorded in very much detail, much more than what I could do. Quick little thing right here. But this building is in need of really significant impacts. At that meeting, the board sent letters out to the White River Valley School District and Payne Mountain School District. Payne Mountain was part of the Central Vermont Supervisory Union, asking if there was an interest in looking at buildings together to say, hey, what can we do? What's going to happen? Our building has clearly been identified as needing repair. Bob and Wes have been at meetings talking about the buildings. We've had several pretty catastrophic each year for the last couple of years. You know, things that really knocked the school out. Right now, there is a transformer that was installed in this building, when this building was built. Transformer has a lifespan, expected lifespan, I'm told, of 35 years. That transformer has been going for 70 years. If that transformer fails, it will leak 100+ gallons of mineral oil onto the floor in the area where it is, and it will shut this building down. So this building is significantly out of date. The Brookfield building also has challenges. The RES is in really pretty good shape. It's your newest building. And Braintree is definitely serviceable.
And Martha, in the letter from the school board in the annual report, there's a QR code. You can also find it through the website of that feasibility study. What part of why it's important to keep so much money in the reserve fund for facilities or for buildings is because if something catastrophic happens, like the heating system breaking down, which happened, right, last year.
Yep.
Kids are out of school.
Right.
Can't have kids in the school. So in a building in this shape, it is, I don't think there's any question can be any question about the need of accessible funds earmarked just for the purpose of getting things fixed as fast as possible to keep kids learning.
So what do you, all of this says that we should be long anticipating a big expenditure, and what kinds of things have been put aside and that kind of thing.
Not sure.
What, money put aside or plans?
Plans.
So the feasibility study told us, yes, what's in bad shape, but also what would need to happen. And if we have a price tag on what needs to happen and compare it to the price tag of just rebuilding, that's where the decision comes down to, right? What's more expensive? Because we're already seeing higher expenses. So that's why we reached out to neighboring school districts saying, hey, we're not in great shape. We also have to know you're not in great shape, because frankly, the state of Vermont is filled with school buildings that are not in great shape. That's why we wanted to reach out and say, well, if we just start talking about what some sort of combined building might look like, that would reduce costs and it would up our resources, right, to go back to the kids. That's what we're looking at now.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a process. It's starting with the engineers, getting a feasibility study, but then figuring out, okay, timeline of construction. Do we want, what would that look like in Randolph's community? And that's a way bigger conversation that's gonna take a lot of input from the community. But to just give you rough numbers as to what we figured, the cost to replace this building as is right now is about 95 million. Is that what we figured? And then the cost of maintaining this building, which I don't remember the number of years span, but the rehab of this building to try to bring it to code for a handful of things that need to be addressing over time is still up around 65. So we're having a really serious conversation around what the future of facilities looks like.
Curious, this was a little bit out there, but, the colleges are also in a state of speculation as well. And might there have been any considerations of whether something at what has been VTC, now being Vermont State University, that maybe a segment of that might somehow play into things? Has that surfaced?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Guess that's it for now. There's a lot to that subject, but.
Yeah, look forward to future conversations about it.
Yes.
Because, in the next few years, we will have to decide as a community, do we replace this building or do we maintain it? Because they cost about the same to do, and we're not sure what the best option is yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other things people have that they want to talk about. Hannah, I'm going to stick around after. Maybe I should look online. If you had something online at hand. I didn't hear any clicking. I didn't see anything when I peeked.
I think we're good.
No raised hands there.
Yep. I think that brings us to the end. I will hang around if people have individual things they'd like to talk about. I'm happy to do that. Happy to take if people are watching this later and they want to call the office and talk to somebody tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah.
Can do that Tuesday.
We're all also very accessible via email. If you write one of us, we all make sure that we all get it. So if you miss anyone's email address, to ask questions. We meet every second Wednesday of the month. We invite everyone who can to either come in person or online, and the location changes. We do our best to be the most transparent we can be. So if you have questions, we will tell you what we know. We will tell you what we're thinking. And, you know, this is pretty good attendance. If you're out and about, please share the things that we've talked about tonight with your neighbors and their voters, and let them know that they can contact us and ask questions. It's complicated stuff, all those letters, you know. I've been on the board for several years now, and I get it now, but it took me a while. So if there are questions, if we can help people understand why the numbers look like they do. We'll all hang out for a bit, but if there's nothing more, I'm going to call the public meeting to a close at 6:45. Thank you so much, and thank you to the cooks, by the way. That was lovely to do community dinner. Thank you. Thank you.